Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My guest today is Stephen Kunes, a prolific writer and storyteller with a fascinating tale of his own. He's the creator of the hit comedy series Over My Dead Body, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Stephen caught my attention with his TEDx talk, Square One at 60 in Philadelphia, and he's going to tell us all about it. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Stephen, your story is amazing, and reading about getting your big break from Norman Lear is even more amazing. Tell us about how you even got up the courage to approach him and the years in between being a comedy writer and playwright leading up to your series Over My Dead Body.
Well, what I did was I've always been fascinated by credits at the end of a show or at the end of a movie, and I would always, I would tell people, I would say, I would love to write for television. I would love to write for the movies. And they would, I'm from Pennsylvania, so they would kind of laugh and, oh, sure you do, that kind of thing. And I'll say, well, I would say, look at all these names. Do you think they just typed them there? I mean, these are people that probably were, from some little town in some far off state, and they said the same thing. And I said, they do it. So, why can't I? And as crazy as it sounds, I had heard stories of people that were, wanted a job, like Steve Jobs. It turns out, guess what he did? He wrote to William Hewitt of Hewlett Packard and asked for a summer job, and the guy called him up and gave him one.
Wow.
And I've heard stories of people that wrote to the president of the Ford Motor Company because their brakes weren't working or something, and the guy picks up the phone.
Yeah.
And what I did was I made a list of half a dozen people that I would just love to work for, not because they could give me a job, but because I really would love to work for them. And Norman Lear was at the top of the list. And I wrote him a letter. And on March 16th, 1983 at 3 p.m., I got a call. And it said, Norman Lear would like to speak with you. And I was in New York, 26 years old. And he said, I would be happy to read anything that you have written.
Wow.
And I sent it out to him. Actually, I didn't send it out to him. He sent a messenger to pick it up, like for a service in New York. And he personally read both of I had done a spec mash and a spec taxi. And the next thing you know, I am working for Norman Lear. Was one of the 4 apprentice writers that he hired. Because I thought, oh, I'll write Norman Lear a nice, sincere letter that everybody told me I was crazy to even think to do.
I admire your courage and your foresight to do that. And, I always say now, I'm in my 60s, and now I say, what have you got to lose? And in those days, we didn't have that confidence because,
Right.
Now we can look back and say that. So it's absolutely amazing. So you relocated to Los Angeles at that point?
So yeah, I was married. My wife was 7 months pregnant.
Wow.
And I go, what am I? This was like either one of these letters is going to lead to something, or I'm going to have to like become an electrician or something. I have no other skills, and a literature degree from NYU does not get you, that far, unless you can't even teach. You have to have a master's degree to do that.
Right.
So I was screwed. But somehow, next thing you know, we were out there living in Studio City, and I spent the next 40 years doing that. In fact, I'm still technically a resident of California. I'm just back east right now assisting I have elderly parents in their 90s. And that's how I got out to California.
So I want to ask about, the writer's room and the culture, which has obviously come a very long way, even since the 80s. We all thought we were very woke in the 80s, right? Compared to now,
Right,
a whole
right.
different thing. So what you went in technically as an apprentice writer. I'm curious, was somebody leaning over your shoulder, or were you given carte blanche to write whatever you want and somehow it ended up in there? What was the process in those days to get something to paper and then onto the screen?
Well, what we did, or what Norman did, which by the way, I have never heard of anybody doing this except for him. he would hire playwrights, he would hire short story writers, anybody that could write good characters and dialogue, not necessarily strong on story. And he would put them or put us together with elderly writers, oftentimes that are in their 60s, as I am now. People don't want them anymore, even though they've written for all these shows, over the decades. So the older writers he would hire, and he would hire younger writers, and he'd put us together. I was partnered with a guy named George Tibbles. How's that for a name? One of his claims to fame is he wrote the theme to Woody Woodpecker.
Oh, really? Oh,
So that's
funny.
but
Yeah.
he also wrote for Dick Van Dyke and I can't name them.
And
Gilligan's Island. I know every
Gilligan's
show
Island,
you've
yeah.
ever heard in the
Yeah,
60s.
yeah.
All in, of course, All in the Family. He wrote everything for Norman. And he would teach me. He said every show is 22 minutes and 38 seconds long. And he said there's a break in the middle for commercials. And he and Norman taught me the trick to writing for television. There's only two, and I'm going to tell you right now. One is that once the remote control was invented, it changed how stories were told.
Mhm.
Because it used to be you'd have to get off your couch and change the channel.
Right.
But now, if they go to commercial, you have a control. Hey, well, while the commercial's on, I'll see what else is on.
Right.
And then a lot of times you might not come back.
Mhm.
So that is what created the cliffhanger. So now in the middle of the story, there better be a good cliffhanger to keep you from switching the channel. I'll share the second secret later in the show.
Okay.
But anyway, George taught me all about the setup, the structure, the payoff, the tag. And I essentially had on-the-job training with the other writers.
Now, were you married to a format? I know there's a format and a sequence for novel writing, for short stories, for novellas, for screenplays. And I'd imagine TV writing is a little different than writing for film. So what was did you have to set up the scenes? Did you have to describe the environment, or you just had to just keep throwing out the punchlines? What was your
No, we would, each of us, we would start with an arena. Like what would be a good idea? Kate, like in Kate and Allie, Kate goes to the Russian ballet. That was a famous one because she liked the Russian ballet. So let's do an episode for Susan St. James. That was what, and so we have to, create the situation and know where it's going to lead. Like on the Lucy show, and how do we get Lucy hanging from a high-rise window?
Right, right.
When William Holden comes by, or whatever it is. So the story would come first. It's usually there's a prologue, then Act 1, Act 2, and then the epilogue. A lot of times for shows, the prologue and Act 1 are connected.
Mhm.
Sometimes, like in Family Ties, certain shows choose to do it a different way. But format, they're pretty much all the same. It's the same amount of time. And I think the best example for a strong format would be Everybody Loves Raymond.
Okay.
That's a particularly good one. So if you want to study something.
So, it's funny, Stephen, that so many people say today that kids' brains are fried from, sitting in front of TV and screens. But as children, we love that, right? We love to come from school and watch TV. And television was exploding in the 60s when we were little kids. And the shows were fun, and I Dream of Jeannie and Gilligan's Island and Bewitched and My Mother the Car and, My Favorite Martian,
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed, Talking Horse, and The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, all these insane things going on, and we just ate it all up, and it formed us, and so can you tell us a little bit about how your childhood formed your TV writing?
Well, I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, which is really the prototype for the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
So we would go out. We didn't have computers then, so we had no computer games, or we didn't even have video games then, really.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to use our imagination more. That's really and we read a lot more, and it was an event. Going to the library was an event. You know, waiting for a magazine to come out was a big deal. We would go to the used bookstores, and it just seems today that a kid doesn't have to leave his bedroom. He
Right.
just like they look at their phone, and you have the New York Public Library on your phone.
Right.
You really don't have to go do any research. It's not just Googling something. It's you can actually find the books, and it's really, and you wonder why kids don't communicate so well.
Right. Right.
Uh, I don't think that there's an 18-year-old today that could put up with what I did in the writer's room when people were, now we were nice to each other, but the executive producer can be critical, like, what kind of joke is that? I think that today people would start to cry.
Yeah.
They would,
Yeah.
we would, I do think there's a great deal of, like, there's an old saying, kids in our day, I feel like an old guy, like Wilford Brimley, I'm now. In my day, the kids didn't really care about the toy. They had more fun playing with the box that it came in.
Right. That's
They
they like the toilet,
have
the paper towel roll, when the paper towel roll is finished, you like to play with and make arts and crafts out of the old paper towel and toilet paper rolls, right?
right,
All these
right.
fun things we did as a kid. Stephen, your identity, often gets wrapped up in the most profound events of our lives. So you had a wonderful career as a TV writer. What changed?
What changed before or during the?
Or I guess a little bit of everything. Like, while you were there, that's a wide span of years that you were doing that. So how did it change over the years when you were doing television?
What happened, well, with me is that I ended up getting divorced in the middle of my career, and that it was even worse than that. I came home one day, and my wife wasn't there. So I go, oh my God, missing, my wife. I looked in the closet, and I don't know, still to this, as I described this to you, I can still picture that there were dust balls in the closet of this house we had. And I go, okay, she's gone. I went to the preschool to see my son. I'm going, oh my God, she's, and he was at the preschool, and I picked him up. So she left both of us.
Wow.
And so that kind of like gave me like, and so what I did was I had to be and I was so embarrassed. I don't know why, like that I didn't even tell my lawyer for like 10 months. It was like one of my close friends, like he did all my deals and everything. Like I just put on this entire facade, like a nut. Like who would do that, right? But I did. And this is back in 1986. But I put on this whole facade that everything was okay, made excuses. Oh, where the wife is, oh, she went out shopping, or she did, whatever it was, and took my kid to school, and my son. And it really took a toll. It was very hard to be funny when that is going on, and when you're living this really a fraudulent existence, because I told my parents, and that's when I decided, well, maybe I'll switch my career. I can do rewrites on movies. I can do, I want to stay home. Oh, but I left out the best part. So like a year and a half later, I get a note from a lawyer, and she came back and wanted custody, even though she hadn't been I was gone.
She abandoned him.
So the next thing you know, and I was at the time writing for Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson got me his lawyer, Miles Rubin. So I thought, well, that's not bad. I have Johnny Carson's lawyer. And even he said, he goes, wow, you have the odds stacked against you. I said, how could this be? She left. And she just shows up like, he goes, I know, and doesn't it suck? But I ended up with custody. And so that was fine. But now I'm this, single father. Since you asked what changed, so life kind of hit me, and I was just trying to work in in a very difficult, or certainly a energy infused business, um, that requires a lot of focus, while at the same time dealing with raising a child, which he turned out great. Um, so that was the main thing, I think, that kind of pushed me to my limit. And then the second thing is, after a while, and they have a committee at the Writers Guild, even to this day, called the Over 40 Committee. If you're over 40 as a writer, it's very hard to get work.
Mhm.
So next thing you know, even though it sounds good, like doing rewrites on top movies, it's difficult to get work. It's easier to have no experience and be in your 20s and get a job than it is to have worked on like a dozen hit shows and be around 50.
So this
And
is, we
so,
talk about this ageism all the time. What do you
right.
attribute that to? That even, the producers are older. Everybody, the whole population is aging. What would they possibly get from a 22-year-old, 25-year-old?
Well, Brandon Tartikoff, who used to run NBC, told me, he said that the audience that they look for is 18 to 35.
Right.
And they feel, well, then who knows better, what's funny for that age group than someone who's in that age group. And I said to him, yeah, but they don't know how to do it.
Right.
He said, well, they'll figure it out. They'll, and then, later I was thinking, what do they want 18 to 35? They said, well, that's the group that spends money. And I said, well, they don't have any money. So the people that have the money are like over 50.
Right. That's the really interesting thing, because what we know now is that the bulk of the population is now what's the second half of the baby boomers, which is people born between 56 and 64. That's now the
Right.
bulk of the spending power. So, and that's what, but we are seeing in TV and films, especially on the streaming services, a lot of movies and shows geared towards older people. So that's refreshing.
Well, what I was going to say exactly that, because of streaming, that changed the whole age thing. So you can pretty much forget everything I just said. That was like before streaming, but now we have Amazon Prime, Netflix. They don't care how old you are. They just care about the show, and that is so. I can't. Refreshing is not even the word. It's given a second wind, or third wind, or even a first wind. The people that just said, I've always wanted to do this. Now they have the chance to do it. There have to be like 500. I couldn't even name all the services. When I started, there were 3 networks.
Right.
Each network had 3 hours a night, 21 hours a week of prime time. Some of that was sports. I used to be able to name every show on every network 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Now I can't even name all the networks. I don't know, Hulu, Apple,
it's a curse and a blessing all at the same time. So, Stephen, tell us how, again, I think I found you through Facebook, but I also found you on your TED Talk. So having the TED Talk and your story out in the open, tell us how that came to be.
The TED Talk, well, I started producing this show I created called Over My Dead Body, where we interview famous dead people from the grave, but we don't mention they're dead. So it's like a comedy talk show.
Okay.
And I got contacted by the TED organization right before the pandemic, because they wanted to have some talks about education injected into entertainment.
Okay.
So I said to them, so that when I do a TED Talk. So I said, that would be great, but I don't know if you want me to do a TED Talk. And they, what are you talking about? Well, I said, what do you know about me? What do you have you done any research? And they said, well, we seen your show and, you were recommended somehow. And I said, well, just get back to me, and I sent them some links, to things. And the reason I did that is I've talked about it online, and I guess I'm talking about it again. But the reason that, I told them that is because I had gotten myself in trouble. I had got myself in a lot of trouble. When I was broke, I took checks from two of my closed accounts, and I put them in a current account, and I was going to play stupid, and I was going to say, like, I needed like $14,000. So what am I going to do? So, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll say, oh, I'm I'm making it up. I don't know what I was going to say. I was just going to say, oh, I made a mistake. Little did I, and then the thing was, I was hoping, well, I'll get paid from this next job, or I'll get this next job, that fell through, by the way. And so the bank, I did not know this, but my own bank, they said, we have to make a police report on this,
Oh,
because this is like, we're required, or if you pay it back in a couple of days, whatever. And so they did. And so I got charged with doing that, and I was sentenced to jail in my home,
oh my
because the
goodness.
jails are full.
Okay.
So they said, here, we'll put you on an ankle monitor. So I had since gotten involved. This is all, could be,
How long did you have to serve under house arrest?
it was going to be 10 months.
Okay.
I think it would have been less, but let's just say, I think it was 10. And I removed the ankle monitor like half the people do, but my reason, most people do this because they're on something. I had met this woman, and you better get here now. I was like, I had lost my mind. I'm
Mhm.
right. And so, and then my lawyer said, well, I don't think they're going to do anything to you the first time, but if you lose that monitor, they're worth like $1,000, and they could charge you with grand theft. So I mailed the monitor back to the sheriff. So now it looked like I was giving them the finger,
Right.
because but that's not why I did it, right?
Right.
So I got charged for that, and I got the same sentence, but I had to serve it in a state prison because it's considered escape by force, or they charged me because when you cut the thing off, it's called by force.
Wow.
So I am the only published case in the United States, I can send you the link to that, of anybody that's ever been charged with that. Anyway, so I did the 10 months, but I did it in a terrible place. And I got out, and this is like 10 years ago, but I got out, and I go, well, I'm never going to work again. And I actually told Norman what I did, and Norman confessed to me that when he was 9 years old, his father went to jail for 4 years because he sold these fake bonds, and he had to live with his mom and his grandmother, and they had to sell their furniture. And for 4 years, between 9 and 13, and he never told anybody. And
Wow.
he finally, just about 5 years ago, he put it in a book for the first time ever. And he said, you should have just told me.
You
He's
could have
100 years.
avoided all of that horrible experience.
My life is a bad sitcom. It's like Lucy. If she had just said she wanted to meet William Holden, she wouldn't have ended up, knocking the plant over at the Brown Derby. But then there would be no show.
So,
Yeah.
Stephen, how did you recover from that? So that's a
Well,
big, that's really falling far down. Yeah.
What really did it for me is I was always, I even, just told you back in 1987, I was covering up a divorce. Now I realize, gee, with the internet and everything, I can't hide anything.
Mhm.
I said, so I guess I don't have to worry what anybody thinks for the first time in my life, because I have I can't spin it. I can't, there's nothing I can do to present myself anything other than what I am. And I'm very sorry to say it took over half a century to figure that out. Some people, they make a mistake, and then, they were 22 years old, and then that's fine. But when you're older, it's more than embarrassing, it's humiliating. And so I said, what am I going to do now? And streaming came along. And I've had a lot of success with this show. And the TED Talk. So anyway, I put this into a TED Talk called Square One at 60. And I've had people come out of the woodwork all with just this praise and like, wow, I'm really proud of you. I'm like, how can you be proud of me? Look what I did. And they go, no, no, no. And they said, I'm just like, I'm honored to know you. In fact, I really wish you well. And it's like when you're authentic. And it's also, I found, for my physical health, it's really, just to be authentic is, I know your podcast is wellness. I think the healthiest thing a person could do is, well, three things: drink water, walk, and be authentic.
Yeah.
Would be, it's really simple.
I
And
can't say that enough. I think it's interesting. And, I wanted to ask you, so how do you view how do I put this? How do you view yourself now as a fully formed adult, relative to how you viewed yourself as a young person first starting out? Like all those things that you've gone through, do you see yourself with the same enthusiasm and hope towards the future that you did when you were younger, now that you've let it all out? Now there's
I actually think, I'm 66. I actually think it's better now.
Uh-huh.
I hope I live forever just so I can write some really great stuff that I'm not doing it to get my name on the television. Like when you go to the high school reunion, you want to
Yes, yeah.
go, oh, I saw your name. Now I just, it's not that. It was that early on. Or at least I noticed when I got to Hollywood, everybody was just wearing the same clothes, trying to be each other, impress each other. And I was like, what is this about? But I really think, and also what's helped me is my dad's 98 and my mom is 90, and I've been helping them out the last half dozen years, most of the time. And it's really given me it's been an eye opener as far as elderly people and what they go through, and life and death, and what matters and what doesn't. I'll tell you what doesn't matter is a television show. As much as I like my show, it's just like Hitchcock said, it's only a movie.
Right.
And I think I feel better. I feel healthier. I used to take Xanax, not anymore. Just to be part. I'll give you an example. When I belong to this writers group called the Story Summit. And when I did my TED Talk, this a couple years ago, I was afraid to post it on my Facebook page. I thought everybody would unfriend me.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly didn't want any of my writer friends to see. I don't like, who does a TED Talk and doesn't post it?
Right.
I was like, that's like saying, hey, who would be afraid to post a TED Talk?
Right.
And I didn't post that thing for about, at least 6 months. And then I kind of shared it privately with my friend David from the Story Summit. He used to be the president of Paramount.
I'm a member of Story Summit, and
yeah, he's like a friend of mine.
Yeah, I love them. For anybody out there listening who's interested in writing, whether a newcomer or a seasoned writer, or just want to, learn about what other people are doing, it's called Story Summit, and you can find them at storysummit.com and also on Facebook. So they're fabulous. So I'm laughing because Story Summit, everybody says whatever they want about their health, their private parts, their children. Right. I mean, that's a forum where people let it all out. So it's interesting that
so I said this to David finally. Oh my God, maybe he knew about me anyway. But I didn't know that. And so he posts it. And I go, oh my God, now it's like on my page, it's everywhere. And all of a sudden I just started getting these private messages, and like nobody unfriended me. Nobody, it was, that's like I was living in fear that I was scared to do the talk, scared what to show the talk. And now it's really my signature piece. I approached it they said, you have 18 minutes. And I said, what should I do? And they said, well, pretend that the nuclear bomb is going to go off in 18 minutes. The world's going to end, or maybe it won't end, but you're going to end. And the only thing you're ever going to be known for is what you say in this 18 minutes. No one's ever going to have anything. So what this is your contribution once and for all. So my talk was 14 minutes. And I stand by it. If I'm known for nothing else, that 14 minutes, that's my contribution to humanity.
That's amazing.
Is how to look at yourself. And the secret is you're not at square one.
Right.
People think they're at square one, depending on where they want to be or where they think they want to be. You never end up where you think you want to be anyway.
Right.
But you Julia Child, I did an episode on her, and she broke down all of the ingredients in a souffle. And she said the exact same ingredients, if you put them in a different order, makes a different, it tastes the same, but it looks different. I said, that's kind of like my life. Like I had wished I got into trouble and screwed up when I was 18. They go, oh yeah, he's a young kid. But it doesn't change the good. It doesn't, it's just, it's a mixture, and we're all part of, we're all a mixture. And that and doing the TED Talk to say, talk about that was very freeing for me. And so, now I'm working on a movie, the movie version of the show for Amazon. And they also made it into a podcast. They stripped the audio from that based on my son's advice. He said, nobody watches TV. Everybody wants to listen to a podcast. I go, I had never listened to a podcast in my life. I go, really? He goes, yeah, just take the audio from your show. It'd be perfect. So now that's like everywhere.
Fantastic. Stephen, I found a series of quotes attributed to you. I think it was the IMDb page. They're so funny and they're so true. And I don't even know if you said it, but I wanted to ask, is writing fun for you? Is it torturous? Is it cathartic? How do you feel when you're writing?
There's an old saying, I hate to write, but I love to have written. I think that applies to me. It's like, I sit down, it's like, it always works out, but you never really know what's going to happen in advance. And if you're on a deadline and it's actually it better be funny and you're going to get paid and all that, I think it makes it a little worse. People go, oh, it must be so much fun to have to write 8 jokes for Johnny Carson in 25 minutes. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Here, you do that. Here, think.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy writing. I enjoy it, especially if it's stuff that I'm choosing to write. That.
One of them, it says, you said, why does almost everyone I meet ask me to write a movie about their life? I don't want anyone writing a movie about my life. And the second is, I don't like reading other people's screenplays. In fact, I don't like reading my own. I totally relate to that. I'm an author of several books. I hate looking at myself in my own books. We all feel that way. It's funny.
Some people love it. Some people just can't get enough. And like, to me, it's the same thing with me with hearing my own voice. Like when I listen to this podcast, God, I have a stupid voice. I'm like, oh, it's awful. It's something, I don't know. And reading my own stuff, it's like I never want to see it again. Dustin Hoffman has never seen a movie that he's been in.
You're kidding. Wow.
That's what he says anyway. And that was about 10 years ago. Maybe he has since. But that's quite a statement. And as far as the screenplay thing, there's 16,000 screenplays registered last year with the Writers Guild. Seems like everybody's got a screenplay, and all of them seem to want me to read it. It's like I was with a friend from high school a couple years ago out at a restaurant. And some guy next to me is like, they said, never tell anybody you're a writer, by the way. Because, oh yeah, they start talking about what happened to them, or this would be a good story. And I hung out with this guy, on and off for a couple of weeks. And he said, we've never been out anywhere where somebody doesn't like tell you their life story. And he goes, doesn't that get old? I said, yeah, it actually does. But when you're a writer or you have a show, like you probably get that all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
People telling you, what do you think of this? And the next thing you're like, your life is a 24/7 pitch session.
Exactly. And, depending on your subject matter, but it's wonderful that you have found success. And Stephen, I want to thank you so much for your bravery in sharing your story and what you've been through with the world. So how do you presently take care of yourself? What's your go-to for your wellness?
Uh, every morning, I, I, I'm not in a hurry to get anywhere. I make a deal with myself. I say, would you be satisfied if at the end of the year you have accomplished, and I make it very simple. Like, I would like to lose 30 pounds, but no, I said, what about just like five?
Okay.
Because if you could lose like 5 pounds every year, that's great. Or, I want to do, I want to finish this one movie script, which, I make it easy on myself. I'll give myself a year, even if it would take me 4 months. And I say, would that be okay? And then I remind myself when I feel like I'm getting nowhere that this, it will be done by the end of the year. And I do one thing or a couple things a day, like little bricks, like you're laying a walkway.
Yes. Mhm.
And it seems, it seems like I'm doing nothing. It seems like I'm getting nowhere. Um, and all of a sudden you make a list, 6 months from now, oh my God, I did this, I did this, I did this, um, rather than do the overload.
Right.
And that's the one thing I set myself up in the morning. First thing I do is I make my bed. Because if I don't make my bed, like, I feel like my whole day isn't, I'm not, it's like a psychological thing.
It's a wonderful piece of advice, and it's used in a lot of training to say that
Right.
one thing, right? You wake up
And
what's the one thing
and
you
the
do,
and
right?
the I have two glasses, 32-ounce glasses. I drink 64 ounces of water a day, and
Okay.
I try to walk for an hour a day.
Mhm.
Not join the gym and be the muscle man, not do, oh, well, let's I don't have the Fitbit or whatever on the cardio, and I don't post my calories, and I'm not in a contest. I will never win it because I believe that when we're little, in our central nervous system, crap gets embedded. Maybe not by us, but it's very hard to just wake up and I'm a whole different person. Look at me. I'm a marathoner. Those people, not always, but a lot, burn out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write 10 pages a day. It's like Joe Heller, who wrote Catch 22, said, my goal is to write a page a day. If I beat that, fine. But you know what? 365 pages in a year is a book.
Right.
And he wrote Catch 22.
You know,
So,
and I always say, Stephen, is meet yourself where you are today, right? Wherever you are today, meet
right,
yourself at that point, right? Don't try to
right.
overdo it or shortchange yourself, just where you are.
And
Absolutely.
where I am today is to just do a little bit each day in each area, and it is phenomenal how it adds up if you do it that way, or you can try to do a whole bunch at once and then just burn out.
So lastly,
And
Stephen,
you
I
know,
just want to ask you, what do you like about getting older?
I like well, personally, the one being smart enough to know what really matters and what really does not.
Right.
And I personally do a show where we focus on famous dead people. And my camera crew, how about this? My DP is 33 now. And we did a show on Mae West, and he'd never heard of her. And he wasn't alone. They hadn't heard of Mae West, Jack Benny, Jimmy Stewart, Jimmy Durante, Jackie Gleason, Groucho Marx. And I go, wow, I hope I don't think I'm doing anything important in this world, because if nobody remembers them, they're not. I go, wow, maybe I should just like enjoy doing this show
Yeah.
and not try to, get all these awards. It was really, the only reason they know Steve Jobs is because of Apple, that they're looking at a phone, and I don't even know if they know him.
Right.
It-
So true. So true.
Can you imagine not like knowing the history of the business you're in. If you're in
Right.
movies, you think
Right.
you'd read at least a book.
Sure.
You would have heard of Jackie Gleason.
Absolutely. It's astounding. It's amazing.
It's kind of astounding. Yeah, I still
But
can't
part of
believe
that
it.
is not just that we're old, but it's also that the world is moving so fast and so many people have had the opportunity to present themselves. And it's sort of like anybody, the old saying, anybody can get their 15 minutes of fame now, and it just crowds the field of,
Yeah. Well, from my point of view, 15 minutes of fame is overrated.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Stephen, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a wonderful conversation. And thank you all for listening.